Actually, I don't know. Emma, do you have that handy to pull up? Or I can.
Know which version and
Okay,
I pull it up.
I will get that going. But meanwhile, we're going to start with Dr. G talking a little bit about healthcare
EHR.
EHRs. Yes.
Cool. Okay. And by the way, Jess, I know there was some stuff going on Microsoft Teams, but I was riding my bike. I just got home. I don't know if I was supposed to respond to any of that
No,
further.
you're just all you're supposed to do is, talk about EHRs.
Okay, cool. All
Perfect.
right. Give me 1 second to set this up. Sorry. Um, Here we go. So what I'm going to be doing now is are everyone seeing my slides?
Yes. Yes.
Perfect. Thank you. So what I'm going to be doing now is talk about some of how we have been using EHR-based simulation for hospital operations in improving staff performance. This is actually going to be a completely physician-focused talk for about 95% of this. We are doing work with nurses and pharmacists, but it's still in its infancy. So one of the things that we got funded a little while ago is what's called the OHSU 2025 infrastructure as it relates to physician well-being and EHR use. And there's 4 components to this. One is that we can measure what we do in the EHR, that's the EHR use metrics. Second is up top here, what are called sprints, this idea that we go into the work site and understand how the EHR is being used in the context of daily workflow. Third is we incorporate the people who design the system. And then finally is training. And I will explain what I mean by level 3 training right now. Sorry, my slides are automatically advancing, being a pain in the butt. So this is from a paper that we published a little while ago that we conceptualize EHR training, EHR being electronic health records, into 4 levels. Level 1 is, do you know how to use a computer? If you're not good at using a computer and not good at using Windows, you won't get through most of the functionality of an EHR. Level 2 training is the basic training that everyone usually gets when they start working at a healthcare system. And it's basically the basic functionality of the system, where to find test results, how to write a note, how to place orders. The third level, which is level 3, is simulation-based training, where we have realistic charts in a test environment of the EHR that are used specifically to train people for their workflow. So a surgeon is going to practice with surgery charts with the type of patients they are going to see on a regular basis, which is different than an obstetrician, which is different than in the ICU. And these classes are taught by peers, by physicians, nurse practitioners, physician assistants in that specialty. And then level 4 training is one-on-one remediation training, which I will not go into today. So what I'm going to be talking about is what we've been doing to expand simulation-based training from beyond a research tool into hospital operations. And by the way, Jessica, I'm not looking at the chat, or if someone from my team, if something appears in the chat, please interrupt and let me know.
Okay.
Thank you very much. So I think it's always important when we talk about how we are using simulation, especially to impact things like hospital operations, to think of that Kirkpatrick's sort of levels of evaluation, where level 1 is, did the participant like it? Their immediate reaction, did they enjoy the training? Level 2 is, did they actually learn something? Level 3 is, do we actually change their behavior? And 4, has that behavior change resulted in changes in outcomes that you're trying to achieve? And what I'm going to try to show you is some data as to where we are along the Kirkpatrick pyramid. So many of you on this call may have heard me talk in the past of how we use EHRs, simulated charts in the EHR, to understand physician decision-making. From this, we developed a curriculum saying, people are so bad at using the computer system that they need this training early on. And so what we did is internal medicine residents, when they started at OHSU, about a month and a half into their training, had a week-long boot camp. And in this boot camp, they had multiple simulation-based stations, how to place central lines, how to treat atrial fibrillation, all sorts of things. But one of the sessions was also focused on EHR use. And this session was about 2.5 hours long, and we would basically take them through best practices of how to use the EHR to prepare for rounds, to gather information and synthesize that information, and what skills and what screens to use in the system. This is our Kirkpatrick Level 1 results, which is which is their reaction. How much did this improve your skill? Again, 90%, 80% of people said very or highly satisfied. Was it useful? Almost everyone said so. Was it enjoyable? Everyone said so. We asked them this 6 months later to get an idea, did it start to change behavior? The answer was still yes, that this improved their skills. They still use the advice they were given? Again, red being a 4 or 5 on a Likert scale. Was the session enjoyable and was it useful? But then what we did is we actually asked them, are they using the screens that we told them to in the EHR? What you're seeing here as a slide is down below are different screens in the EHR. Do not worry about the names of them. In gray is objective data from when people did simulation-based training with no training at all, what screens they would normally go to. Blue was during the simulation-based training session, we actually monitored what screens they used with video capture software. Red is what they said they were still using 6 months later. And what you could see is blue is greater than gray, red is the same as blue. So blue meaning they learned something during the session. We taught them a skill, and then when they had to go practice it on their own, they used it. Red is some influence, some measure of change in behavior because they say they're still using it later on. Based on this data, we got system-wide funding to take this beyond internal medicine. And now we do this for all interns across all specialties at OHSU and also for some attendings. This is now for everybody. This was done during the pandemic, but you could see it's the same Likert scale. The only difference is I changed the colors around just to confuse everybody. So now blue is good, red is bad. And this is, again, our Likert perception. Was it enjoyable, useful, and did it improve their skills? Again, mostly positive. And then this is about the structure of the session. Here, we want it to be in the gray zone, meaning neutral, that we wanted the pace, clarity, and difficulty to be just right. This had a net promoter score of a positive 23. A net promoter score is when you ask people on a scale of 1 to 10 whether they would recommend the session to others. You take the percentage of people that give you a 9 or a 10, subtract out the percentage of people that give you a 1 through a 6, and that is your net promoter score. So a positive 23, meaning that those people would give the majority, 23% of people, more people gave us a 9 or a 10. Give you an idea, the net promoter score for the level 2 training, the standard training, is a minus 92. So people were enjoying this and enjoying this as an adjunct to what they normally got. What we did learn during the pandemic is some of these sessions had to be in person, could be in person, but some had to be virtual. And the virtual sessions did not go over nearly as well because in order to do this, we are demonstrating skill use on a screen and allowing for deliberate practice concurrently at the same time. And people didn't have 2 screens at home and they didn't have the internet bandwidth. We are now starting, and we have now expanded this and have done this for 2 more years. And every year, our data are getting better in terms of patient provider perception. And so now this last year, for example, this year we're doing it, we're halfway through. Our net promoter score is a positive 50. Not bad. Now, We are now starting to get into that Kirkpatrick Level 3. Do we have any objective measures that we are changing behavior? So now in order to do this, we go into what's called the audit log. So we look at the EHR audit log and we look at the user's actual use of specific screens. Now, one of these screens is a patient safety screen. It's called the Deterioration Index. This is a scoring system that is proprietary to our EHR that predicts whether patients are going to be at high risk for needing to be transferred to the ICU. Alicia is quite aware of this score, I'm sure, because she teaches it to her nurses in their onboarding.
Yeah.
OHSU onboarded this score. They put it into the EHR. And what they did is they told everybody, watch a video and then use it. And what is pretty clear is if you tell people to watch a video and then do something, it's not going to go over very well, especially when it comes to EHR use. So what we did is we went into the audit log and we said, what percentages of registered nurses, residents, attending physicians, students, nurse practitioners, physician assistants, etc., actually use this score, that they have widgeted it or incorporated it into their patient lists. You could see nurses were at about 15%. Now, again, this includes some nurses that would have no reason to use this. So this is an underrepresentation. Residents were at 15%. Everyone else is about 5%. But when you looked at we incorporated this last year into our level 3 training, into our onboarding. And when we separated out the residents who got our training on the right versus those who did not on the left, meaning there are more senior residents, they never had a chance to go through it, it's almost 5-fold higher. So that the training changed behavior. Still not great, but it did change behavior. We also used this during the pandemic to help with redeployment of personnel. So during COVID and during the Delta wave, we had to take our nurse practitioners, our CRNAs, our nurse anesthetists. We closed our ORs and we turned them into ICU nurse practitioners. But they had to learn how to use the EHR in a completely new way. And we had to do this in 2 weeks. Surprise, surprise. We created a curriculum based on what we taught the residents and gave it to every nurse CRNA going to the ICU in a 2-week period of time. This data was published last year in ACI. This is said that for whether they could actually whether they found this system useful and increase their comfort, blue meaning significant, a great deal. And what this does is it shows you, there's 2 things here. One is we asked them whether they were already comfortable with the system or whether it helped them with their performance. Most people said it helped them a great deal and that they found it significantly useful and that they could do the skills with minimal guidance. That's that light blue here. They also found the session to be very well, just the right pace and clarity. And again, they said everyone thought it was extremely useful or helped them a lot and was enjoyable and improved their skills. And then when we asked them specific parts of the curriculum that they liked, they said that this was, here are all the different skills that we taught. And yellow means is that they thought it was useful for their role in the ICU. But what was interesting is they all felt these skills would be useful going back to their role in the ORs afterwards. Last but not least, some other data, as I said, we've shown that this standardizes our use of note templates. As I said, we've been expanding this every single year for all the interns, and our net promoter scores are staying in the 40s and 50s. And most recently, in the data I want to show you, is OHSU has a satellite hospital. It's called Adventist. They were on a separate EHR until March of this year. And in March of 2023, they changed from one computer system to ours, which is called Epic. And with this, we decided that everyone got their level 2 training, the basic onboarding, But then what we did is for the entire month of April is we held every day a 1.5 hour optional class for anyone who wanted it. That was this workflow specific simulation based training in the EHR. We had 40 attendings who decided to go through this. I'm going to skip this slide. The Net Promoter Score of the people who went through that training was a positive 67. That is massively high. And now we are using the audit logs to see, did this change behavior? So what you're seeing here are different screens, again, on the x-axis. These are now red are any physician who is logged into an inpatient in context at Adventist who did not get our training. Blue are the physicians who did. And these are the percent of users. And you could see the number of screens where blue is greater than red, star, meaning these are statistically significant differences. And now we are starting to monitor this over time. So what we have now doing, you're going to be looking at some run charts. What we've done is taken the percent difference between blue and red and made it a single number. So here what you're seeing is for each screen, the overall difference between the blue and red bars. Again, positive meaning greater adoption in those who got training versus those who didn't. And now you could see the change over time that this is persistent for at least 3 months after the training for both specific screens and specific activities. So now where are we with our Kirkpatrick model? Is I will argue that we are at least here at level 3, that we have objective evidence that we're getting change, sustained change in behavior. You could argue that we're going to try to get to these level 4, which is results of the system. And that becomes a little bit more difficult because you have to measure improvement in patient outcomes, which is hard for a pure EHR skill. But for example, we are seeing the impacts of our training on things like provider burnout, which I could argue is a level 4 or result-oriented metric, just not patient-centered, but provider. So I will stop there, and this is our research team.
Prof, I love the word
Deterioration index.
Yes, thank you. So can you slowly explain a bit again? I kind of missed that definition.
So the deterioration index is I think it has 15 parameters in it that are physiologic parameters. So is the patient on oxygen? How high is their heart rate? What is their blood pressure? What is their age? It's very similar. It's a similar idea to an Apache 2 score in many respects. But the idea is that scales on a score of 0 to 100, and it's subdivided into zones, a green zone being less than 40, a yellow zone 40 to 70, a red zone 70 to 100. And usually scores over about 65 to 70, those patients have a much, much higher risk of needing ICU transfers. And usually what we do at OHSU, and again, this is meant for adults, by the way, adult patients, very clearly, not kiddos, is our rapid response teams actually monitor this as well. And they will actually use this as an indication for automatic consult on patients to make sure that they're okay. The score is not perfect. There are flaws in it and it needs to be improved, but it's still pretty good. I show it more as a way of saying that within the EHR, there are many tools that are useful, but in order to drive adoption, you can't just give people a video and say, watch this and do what the video says and expect to get meaningful impact. People have to get practiced with the tool and understand why. And that's part of what we do with this class. And so it's really more, I'm using that as an example of how we could change workflow and really that sort of Kirkpatrick model of change of behavior.
Thank you, Prof.
Dr. Go, for the media, you use the media that record in the simulation center, or you really do it with the checklist and do it in the studio?
So when we capture what they're doing in the EHR, we use screen capture software, Cam Studio or Camtasia. That becomes much easier because that will also give you keystrokes and mouse clicks, so it's good for usability as well. You just have to make sure this is where you want a simulation instance of the EHR, because you always want to be careful if you're taking screen capture videos of real patient charts, that those don't, because of privacy laws, you don't want those leaking out somewhere. But like you could get Cam Studio or Camtasia. Like Cam Studio is free, although it comes with some malware that usually breaks your computer. But like I buy Camtasia, which you could use for screen capture, and it costs me like $200 a year, something like that. I just pay for it out of pocket. It's not that expensive. When we do some of our advanced usability analysis and our level 4 training, working with our struggling learners, there we use eye tracking. That's when we use a very sophisticated piece of hardware that will track specifically where where a person's pupils are staring at on the screen to the level of the word. So I could see what words you are reading and in what order. And that also comes with screen tracking with it as well. But that software is about $30,000, $20,000 for the hardware, excuse me.
And for the post-training survey that you have one slide said that they still uses the knowledge or skill from training after that. How long that you do the survey for the post-training survey?
6 months. 6 months later.
Okay.
And
Because
we use
I think about I think about in BDMS Sim Center we want to do the post-training survey as well, but we plan to do like a 1 month, 3 months only. Okay, if you do it at 6 months, maybe we will do again, because right now the information about the post-training attitude and the behavior.
Well, it also depends. So for residents at OHSU, they frequently rotate in different hospitals. So sometimes you want, like, they could be at other hospitals with other EHRs for 3 months and then come back. And so we wanted to make sure there was enough time they could come back to practice. And plus, I was an idiot. So we did this training in like August, and then we realized we needed to do a post-training survey. And by the time we realized it was November, and we didn't want to do it around the holidays. So then we ended up saying, okay, we'll make it 6 months. We did it like at the end of January. So, and then like anything else, we wanted to stick to the same methodology. And plus, like in general, you want, it depends on what you're asking about. My thought is usually when you look at adoption literature, you really want to give at least 3 months at a minimum to look for sustained behavior, because there's such a recency effect with training. A month is usually a little too soon, I find. I would defer to Alicia with that, for especially some of the stuff that relates to nursing skill, as to whether 1 month is appropriate. I think it's good to see for initial adoption at that 1 month, but if you want to look for sustainability, I think 1 month is still a little too early. I still think it should be at least 6, minimum 3, but probably closer to 6 months or a year. But Alicia, could you comment on that if you don't mind?
It has to align with overall evidence-based practice on teaching and learning, regardless of the person, right? So in order to actually know the information, own the responsibility of what it is to do that type of work and monitor those things, and then they have to practice it for a while. They have to practice. To Jeff's point, he saw improvement and changes in behavior after they practiced it for a bit, right? Just showing them the information isn't enough. And so you can't really evaluate performance again until 6 to 9 months, even a year. You can start getting some early warning signs or early, how things are working at 3 months. Yep, it's the same.
Thank you, Alicia. Sorry to put you on the spot there. But a lot of this is going to come down, like I was actually just on a call with some dude, I think his name was Peter, but we're just going to call him Peter because it's a good name. I like it. It's all of New South Wales. I think it's New South Wales. That's where Sydney is, I believe, right? And they are going to be installing Epic for all of Sydney, for like the whole health system down there. And again, they're sort of looking at ways, how do we get good adoption? And I know that BDMS prior to the pandemic has been thinking about different EHRs. And at some point, you guys are going to have to do this and have one system, one computer system for your network. And how you train people on that system is going to be essential to getting the maximum return and also ensuring that you don't have unintended negative patient outcomes from adoption.
You give them the opportunity to be
as
more.
I think what is really going
with up to 20 million young people joining the African workforce
all
each
the
year,
skills you're training
empowering
right now,
the next generation has never been more
how
important.
to take care of patients with
Access
MIs,
Bank's
with
Project
strokes,
Lead
all those
has equipped
skills.
over 90,000
When you
students
talk about,
with leadership
I have to now
training.
order meds,
And our
or
Pitch
I
It
have
On
to do
scheme invests in
documentation.
female
Once you bring an
entrepreneurs,
EHR
helping them
into that,
realize
that's
their
an
vision.
important skill set
Access.
you need to
More
include in the nursing
than
training, not
Now,
just
what
for
started
knowledge
as
of the
abdominal
technology,
pain, diarrhea,
but how to
fever, night
balance
sweats
that
turned
in
into
their
a
workflow.
16-month medical
And I
ordeal for a
can't stress that
64-year-old woman
enough.
in New
And
South
not
Wales,
all
Australia.
The cause of
places
those
do
symptoms
that,
turned
and it is
out to be
essential,
an 8-centimeter
in my opinion.
roundworm living
For
in her
nurses and
brain.
This
physicians,
specific
too. I don't mean
one.
to just call out
The
the nurses.
parasite is found
That's not
in
my
carpet
intent. Sorry,
pythons and
Lisa.
has never been known to infect a human before. Doctors believe that the
Thank you for
infection
your
likely
advice.
came from python feces, and
This is
they've
very
never seen a case like
motivated
this before. And
Sim Center.
Max, you sent that to the team this
Any
morning.
other
I
questions
Made us
feel
all
it's
feel
a bit of a
very
shocker. I mean,
nauseous at
we should
breakfast.
say she's fine.
Thank
A
goodness.
bit sort of yucked
Dr.
out, I'm
Dave,
sure.
hello.
But she collected
have
grasses
questions.
from around a lake
Hi.
where they had pythons, so they think that's how it all
Now,
happened.
I think
But actually, a great
my
medical work by the
hospital
team
have the
at the
training
university.
of the
Absolutely.
EHR already, but it's the real life, not the simulation. We teach the new nurse or new doctor with the EHR with the on the job. When have the problem, they consult in the real life. I have some problem. We don't have the trained EHR as the simulation. If I would like to create this simulation curriculum for EHR, how to present to my hospital to accept it to create simulation, because something like, for example, for improve patient outcome by integrate with workflow or something like that. I'm no idea, because now we train on the job, not have separate to simulation.
That is a slide of Dr. Go, which I love about the pyramid and your bar graph.
Yeah. So I think the biggest thing is with all this, you have to talk to your ITD or your informatics, your computer people. The way that we do this at OHSU is that we house a copy of our EHR on a separate server that's only for training. And then this way we could populate it with charts that we design, and they could be used and you could use them without fear. Now, you could put in orders and it's not going to go to pharmacy. You could do whatever you want. It's not going to cause any harm whatsoever. And it may be, privacy laws are a huge issue, but they are a little different in Thailand. You may be able to even get away with copying your EHR and just putting that on a server that doesn't link to things like pharmacy, et cetera. And you could even practice on real patient charts if you wanted to. as you're not altering a real patient record, if that makes sense. The problem that you always want is if you think about like training for a cardiac arrest, training a code, you don't want your only training to be during real codes because you can't control what happens in a real code. Everything's all over the place. So the reason that we do this is that we know exactly what's in each of these medical charts. They're designed to teach the skills we want to show, as opposed to real patients where you don't know what's going to show up that day. So for example, I just finished doing a class for all of our surgery interns on Monday. God help me. And they needed, part of it is that we want to show them where to find transfusion records and how to do that work. You need a simulated chart to do that. You could be but you show up that day and you train them at the elbow or in the system, there may be no patients with that stuff.
Thank you.
Oh, thanks for putting in the comment there, Alicia.
Dr. Paisan, please take a look at Alicia's chat box.
Okay.
Next one. Thank you, Prof. Next one. We look forward to hearing from Liz's presentation. Oh, sorry, Emma.
So I just want to give you a quick update about some of the exciting things that have been happening around the OHSU SIM Center. The first thing that I don't have a specific slide for in photos is that something exciting we've been doing is we sort of repurposed what used to be my office. It's a supply room now. We're using it to be a prep space for both simulation skills and moulage. So we have sort of moved all of our moulage supplies into a room that has quite a few different cabinets and bookshelves, as well as a sink and some counter space so that we can have a dedicated area to do moulage work that tends to get a little bit messy. We may have photos to show you when we come to visit in October, but right now we're still at the very beginning stages of setting up a stock room that has a lot of different moulage stuff so that all of our team has a space to work on that when they need to make a mess and be able to clean it up in the same space. The next few slides we'll share a little bit of information about our AV upgrade and some of the new mannequins that we have on site. Next. So I think we may have mentioned when we came to visit you the last time that we had a complete full system upgrade. We replaced all of our AV equipment and have now new cameras, cloud-based infrastructure. So all of our information is available and accessible online. We've been using a program called Sim Capture, which allows us to effectively manage, record, and assess simulation training both on site and in situ. It captures all of our audio, video, annotations, patient monitors, simulator data, and it's all in a single web-based interface. And this solution is being used in over 500 healthcare institutions and more than 35 countries to generate reports and statistics on performance trends and administration tracking usage and learner outcomes. Sim Capture is also mobile friendly so that you can do it anywhere, anytime. Next slide. One of the new simulators that we got is birthing simulator. Her name is Victoria. She is manufactured by Gamard. And I'll put a link to the website in the chat for her. She is able to simulate a lot of different deliveries and births a lifelike full-term baby that you can actually program vitals for, as well as programming vitals for her. She also converts into a non-pregnant patient, and you can use her for gynecological training. Next slide. These are a couple of pictures of the mannequin on site at OHSU. The medium skin tone, and diversify some of the simulators that we have, because primarily when simulators were a little bit newer to simulation, they all came in Caucasian skin tones. So it has been a goal of ours to try and get different varying skin tones for all of our simulators so that it'll more accurately portray the communities that we work with. Next slide. The next new mannequin that we have on site now is also from Gamard. Her name is Susie, and we got Susie in an African American skin tone or African skin tone. She has a lot of different features, and I've linked to the website where you can look up more information about Susie. She has different IV sites. She also converts to a geriatric patient because she comes with a different facial mask overlay that looks like an elderly patient. You can also change her chest skin and her genitalia so that it is sort of a more versatile patient. It can portray any gender. And in addition, she can also do breast and gynecological exams. Next slide. This is our new SimMan 3G Plus. SimMan 3G Plus comes from Laerdal, and he has a little bit of a more realistic facial features, whether you get the Caucasian, the medium skin tone, or the African skin tone. He also, like Susie, has interchangeable head skin, so you can make him into a geriatric patient if you buy the additional mask for his face. His body has realistic articulation, which is new. The old SimMans did not have that as a feature. Something else that's kind of cool about this mannequin is that you can do non-invasive blood pressures using an actual blood pressure cuff, and you can also use a real pulse oximeter instead of having to simulate those through just the mannequin vitals monitor. It also has places for IM injections and IOs. And if you choose, you can also buy a trauma leg that simulates an amputation trauma that also bleeds. And I've also included the link to his page there too. And next slide. For our wish list, we don't quite have the approval to purchase this mannequin yet, but we're working on a case because the only real pediatric simulator that we have that is around this age is Sim Junior, and it's more of a mid-fidelity simulator that doesn't really look as realistic as we would like it to at times, and it doesn't have as many features as a lot of our user groups are looking for. This mannequin is pretty exciting to see in person. I have seen it at IMSH several times, and this mannequin's eyes will track movement, so it looks like it's looking at you. It also has a more realistic looking face. It has a silicone face. It actually does facial expressions. It moves its mouth. It kind of squints. When it is supposed to be in pain, it looks like it's in pain. It has the ability to cry. And it actually looks a lot more realistic than any other mannequin I've seen that's crying or sweating. It is, like a lot of our other simulators, wireless and tetherless if it needs to be, so that you can transport it pretty much anywhere. And let's see, do I have a link for how? I didn't prepare that one. Let me see if I can find that link for you so that you can look it up. Oh, I guess it's in my slides. It is. Here's the how. I think that might be my last slide. Can you click through one more? There we go. Now it's Jessica's turn. Unless you have questions.
Thank you so much, Lish. It's great to showcase some of the new and exciting equipment that has been integrated into programs at OHSU. I just have a quick overview of a few things to share with you around kind of some of our simulation operation leadership components. One is that we have started up again. We do a monthly newsletter And within our newsletter has a lot of our kind of updates around new staff members and leadership and equipment. So we can share those. A couple of our recent newsletters we'll send back to all of you so that you can look at what we, the types of things that we share with our simulation community as a way to keep people posted on the work we are doing. Another way that we are getting involved is through the Healthcare Simulation Week. This is something that was started about 6 or 7 years ago through the Society for Simulation in Healthcare. If you go to this link, which I can also copy over to, oh, Blish has already done it. She's fast. Over to the chat. There are lots of different, marketing materials, information about it. And there's a place where you can add your simulation center to the map of people. Simulation week. If you have events that week, that's another opportunity to share what you are doing. And a lot of people will be watching the activities around the world that specific week. So we just wanted to make sure you were aware of that. And it looks like their theme this year is be a champion of your success story. So you can interpret that how you would like to and involve yourself in whatever way you have time for, if you do. Another couple of things, Lish mentioned this already. We've been very focused on kind of integration of diversity, equity, and inclusion from an equipment perspective, diversifying our mannequin skin tones. We have other projects that we're working on that we will share more with you in the future. And the other thing that we're doing soon in September, actually on that same day, is September 18th. We are having the Oregon Health Science University Board of Directors is coming to tour simulation. So opportunity to see the work that you're doing, programs, and continue, especially as I'm sure, like for many of you in your leadership roles, finding more money is always helpful. But when you can show them what you're doing, that's great. I believe that is it. And I will pass the baton to Emma, who is going to talk about our SP and Ceta program updates.
Yes.
Jeff.
Yes. Maybe just 1 second right before we get on to Emma, just to make sure our BDMS colleagues don't have anything that they want to ask or any quick questions about the 2 sections that we just went through.
Perfect.
Sorry to interrupt, Emma. Sorry about that, but I just want to make sure because there's a lot of great information, but I want to make sure there's no specific questions for you or Lish.
I think no question now. I let Emma start the SP section.
We'll go for it. Sorry. Thank you.
No, you're good. All right. Just a few updates from the SP world over here. We're very excited. We had a 16-person cohort hire group in over the summer. So we have 16 brand new SPs. In terms of the training and onboarding, we've been spearheading a lot of that for specifically around feedback training. So these folks are not all trained actors. I would say about 60% of them are, and in the Portland community. Some folks are new to the Portland area, and other folks are recently retired teachers or folks who are doing pieces and parts of their jobs who are interested in this work. And we've had 4 or 5 different training sessions now with each of these new folks. And so now they're officially graduated from the training program and onboarded. And so they're working now with our new medical school class that just came in last week, had their first CSA with us, which is always really exciting. One of the things I love to do after the first encounter that the medical students have is to read the feedback back to the SPs of that first encounter, because the learners are so nervous. And then after they have their first encounter, they are just like gushing about simulation methodology and the standardized patients. And it's really motivating for the standardized patients to get that feedback from the medical students that they just saw. So we always, when we do onboarding, try to remind the SPs why they're there and that we're all kind of in service to the learners and like future clinicians. One of the other pieces over the summer we did is called Vital Talks. So this is a portion of the internal medicine onboarding, the first year interns. And so Vital Talks is basically kind of a more enhanced, difficult conversation or breaking bad news. And we work really closely with the Center of Ethics on that. And so all of our internal medicine residents go through this Vital Talks training, and we wrapped that up about 2 weeks ago. Vital Talks is a national program. So it's not local to OHSU. We used curriculum from a national program that specializes in this and trains the facilitators who are almost entirely internal medicine attendings and faculty. The last piece I want to talk about for the SP program is we have a new proposal out for a PITA, and a PITA is a physical exam teaching associate. So in many standardized patient programs around the world, the standardized patients are also tasked with teaching very basic physical exam skills to incoming nurses and med students, PA students, kind of anyone who's doing a head to toe at some point. And so one of the things we've been looking to move away from is having SPs be taught on and having SPs be taught with. So the idea that instead of just being a body in a room, that they're involved in the teaching of the assessment of the head to toe assessment. So we haven't started that program yet, but it's on the horizon and kind of at the top of my to-do list. And if you look up the word PITA, it is in the SSH dictionary. It's also in the Association of Standardized Patient Educator Standards of Best Practice. So if you were to Google PITA and SP, that will come up. It's a very recognized term. So that's in there. The other thing I wanted to talk about is our new Ceta program, which is our old GTA and MUDA program. Basically, these are our standardized patients who are teaching associates who are teaching intimate exams, gynecological and urological, chest, pelvic, genitalia exams on their own bodies. One of the changes that Alyssa Ledesma, who spearheads that program, has done is moved from GTA and MUDA, which are gendered terms, to Ceta, which is basically everybody. So as we are working hard on our diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives, some of our language is changing. And so we've moved on from ecological teaching associate and male urological teaching associate to Ceta, which is sensitive exam teaching associate. And we had to get buy-in from all the different programs, and it was a really good kind of exercise in updating language for everybody involved. And I'll hand it back to Jessica.
Great. So we have some other future topics, both for tonight and for the future. Alicia, I didn't know if you wanted to talk at all about the latest and greatest with your program, with the TTP program.
I can share a little bit, and I have another reference or resource to share. Put that in the chat. So I put a reference in the chat. So what we're doing organizationally, we've just gone through a restructure within our nursing division. I'll be in a new role. And one of the things I can share is there's been a significant change in workforce across the US, not just in healthcare. And so my primary focus is what the workforce is like in nursing. And so we've seen that they're just not staying as long. There's different things that there are priorities, so recruitment, retention, retirements and resignations, along with, their transition experience into the nursing profession for new people, but also how to then support experienced nurses in the system. So we've just spent the last 8 months on an initiative called Transition Reimagine, and we used a co-design framework, and I put the link in the chat of the co-design framework with the website and the textbook that we used to reimagine our program and our work streams. And so that's something we could talk about, me presenting when we come for our site visit. But I thought at least it would be something to share with you now, to just start looking into that framework and think about what the needs are related to transition and how we use simulation.
Any question for our great speakers? Hello, anyone? If not, I have a question. Okay, so I am very much like that pyramid of yours, Dr. Go. Back to your pyramid. So besides checking behavior through survey, is there anything else we can check?
Ask that again, Dr. Wanapa. I want to make sure I understand.
Remember, you have the pyramid, and level 3 is a behavior, and level 4 is a result, right? And you said that one of the things you do is to follow up every about 6 months to ensure that sustainable behavior, right? So is there anything else you can do to check them?
So a lot of that depends. I would say that in general, self-report is probably the worst way to assess behavior, because people aren't always accurate in what they report, and there's significant bias in what they report. So what you want to try to do is have some way to validate people's report of their change in behavior with some objective measure. So for example, like for me, it was easy because we used the actual computer to measure behavior. So it's not a question of whether they're using the screen or whether they say they're doing something. I know exactly what they're doing because I can follow where they are in the computer system. So if you wanted to look at, like, you may want to do something, like here would be a perfect example. Say you did a training on sterile technique for putting in central lines. You would probably want to have a process in place where you're actually doing periodic audits in the ICU to actually see adherence to those best practices and see if that behavior changes. So I think what's always important is saying, when you're training to a behavior and you're training to a process, and we've sort of talked about this from the beginning, you want to be able to measure your baseline performance with that process in some objective measure. And then that is what you also want to assess for that change in behavior, if that makes sense. So, I'm trying to think of a good example based on some of your simulations, and my brain is just short-circuiting right now, so I'm sorry about that. You guys are the one where it's early in the morning.
Never mind, Prof. You need some more Diet Coke then.
Oh, geez, yes, it's Coke Zero, first of all. But I think, again, this is where, for example, sometimes it may be the use of an order set. So here would be a perfect example of where with sepsis, we're doing a brand new campaign at OHSU to improve outcomes in sepsis. We want people the specific sepsis order set. So again, whether that would be paper-based or the EHR, we could say what percentage of patients with sepsis had that order set used. Right. There's a lot of different ways in which you could find something to measure at the point of care. And I know for some of these, for nursing related ones, I would also defer to Alicia on how they measure some of this at OHSU. We are fortunate because when you have an EHR, you could track a lot of behaviors that way. It's not perfect, but you can do it.
Thank you. Dr. Noradet, I think you have a question through the chat box, right? Can you share with everyone? I think he has a question about SP.
It looked like the question was around the scheduling of an SP for simulations and how long you make an appointment before a sim class to schedule. And Emma was saying that it's normally 8 weeks prior so that we can get the final case and do a dry run beforehand.
That's what I understood. If it's a learner or your participants, then it depends on the schedule of whoever you're trying to get. But if you are talking about standardized patients, then yes, 8 weeks out is ideal for us.
We can have one last question before session finish. TikTok. One
No.
more.
Okay. Schedule of the October, I sent via first to Jessica, and I would like to get the some comment about our simulation day that we will do it on Tuesday to expand our knowledge to the SimFAR that cannot join us on site. Okay, I think on that day should be like quite basic.
So that means, sorry, for that mean that you have to confirm class 8 weeks before so we can schedule the trainer, SP, and the sim operation. That you said ideally, but for the practical,
So the SP and the operator, so if it's a lead faculty or SimFA, 8 weeks out. And then if your participants need to be assigned later, that's okay. But yeah, too much, because you need to rehearse as well, and you need to make sure that everything is okay, and that our SPs also are busy. They work at many institutions, and so if your SPs are not, then maybe you only need to schedule them 4 weeks out, but you need to make sure your project and your learning objectives and you need to be working on that at about 8 weeks out in case there are issues or you need to consult a different faculty member or you have questions, especially with a new SimFA or a new faculty member who is requesting the simulation.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I think we reached the end of the time. Super comprehensive as always. And we capture the reference you share to the chat box. Thank you much, everyone.
Open our camera and take picture and capture the participant today.
No
So
need. It's
but
all
open
fresh, no
camera
makeup.
and then capture.
No makeup, no photo, please. Thank you.
Okay, I will do the Photoshop for you.
Okay, bye-bye.
Have a great day and good night.
Thanks, everyone. Great job. Thank you.